Okay, so our next step is to start putting some musculature, some muscles onto our skeleton or esqueleto. So we are going to be adding thigh muscles, calf muscles, butt, chest, arms, shoulders, head. We're going to start building this out into 3 dimensions. So if you think of this in 3 steps, we are done doing the skeleton portion of this figure. Our next step is to do some musculature, and it is a skeleton, so you don't have to do much, but you have to build out at least the bones a little bit. So we're going to kind of look at 2 ways to approach this. So our next step is to make that sort of underlying fill-in of what could be conceived as muscles and bones. And then the last step will be to apply the skin, which we're going to do with plaster. But so for this step, I'm using paper towels. And you can use paper towels, newspaper, or whatever you want, something that's kind of relatively soft. And I'm just tearing them into like workable pieces, something like that, like a paper towel size. The main thing that people forget with these figures is that they have a rib cage and they have a chest, and even if they're in skeleton form. So what I would do is take some of this newspaper, I'm crumpling it up. I'm not folding it and making it perfect. I'm going to take 2 of these and just sort of wrapping it together and kind of folding it together. And what I want to show you is our rib cage, if you think about it, if you feel your own ribs, they're about half of the height from your hips to your shoulder, maybe even a little lower than that. So if we look at our spine, we've got this much space, right, from our hips to our shoulders. So if our rib cage should go at least halfway down. If I take this wad of paper towels that I made and I hold it up here and I make this rib cage start right underneath the shoulders, which it should, I am going to hold it there tightly, and I just have the spine sitting just like that, and I'm just wrapping it kind of around that spine for now and holding it with my fingers. I'm going to use some tape and tape it in place. What I'll do is take 1 tape around just to hold it tight around that spine. And then I do 1 over the shoulder, like so. Wrap it over the shoulder. And then another 1 over the shoulder. So I stick it onto the back, hold it with my thumb, and wrap this over the shoulder. So it kind of creates a harness to hold that rib cage in place. So now I'm going to put another piece of wrap all the way around the bottom. And I'm just using regular masking tape, like the kind of roll that's in your supply package. So now I've started and I have this, and you can see that it's starting to fill out that area for a rib cage. Now, it may be too flat, it may be too small. You may want to adjust this a little later. This can always be done with adding more. You can also do this with plaster. But I'm going to use a little bit more of this to extend what I've got. So I'm using another wad of paper towels and just wrap it onto what's already there. I want to give a little bit more volume or a little bit more fill in the rib cage. So I wrap it around, right, chest high. And I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. Wrap that around so it holds it right to the spine. This doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to be covering all this with plaster anyway. So you won't see any of this. But, just for maneuverability and manageability sake, if you feel like it's too lumpy or things are sticking out and they're going to get in your way, then just tape them down if you want to. Remember, no one's going to see this but you, this point. So now, we can kind of look at the rib cage here, and you can see this figure has some actual area that I can wrap with plaster. If you want to, you can. There's only 2 other areas that you must do. One is the head, and the way I'll do that is take another just piece of paper towel and kind of crumple it up. You notice I'm not folding anything. The crumpling holds more area. So what I'm going to do is kind of make it into something that can fit through the head space of my sculpture. And then again, wrap it with tape. And I wrap it around. couple different directions really will help keep it in place while you're working on it. But again, this is all going to be covered in plaster, and so you don't really have to be too perfect at this point. It's just basically getting it into position. Now, if you think about this, a person's head, and I want you to look at the enclosed skull dimensions that I told you, or that I have in the Canvas assignment. The skull dimensions, this is not quite right. I might need some more area in the back of this skull. I may have to build out my chin in plaster. I'm going to add a little bit more thickness to this head. The way you do that, just tear some other paper off, again, crumple it up, and I'm just going to add this to the back. Now, I know it seems like a lot, but this can compress down pretty easily. I'm going to hold it on here, wrap it around tightly. By the way, if you burnish this tape, in other words, use your fingernail or something else that's kind of hard and sharp to scratch the surface of this tape, it makes it stick a little bit better. Just so you know. So I sometimes do a little scratching with my fingers just to make it stick a little bit better. So I'm getting kind of close here to what I want as a skull position. I'm just going to leave it like that. You don't want it to be round like a ball. Think about how a skull really looks. Take a look at some of the photos and some of the drawings of skulls in your package, okay? Or in the Canvas assignment. So we got the head, we've got the rib cage. Now the next step is to do the hips. And that's what everyone seems to forget. This one you can crumple it up, and sometimes I'll crumple it up and then open it and then refold it, kind of position it. You're making something that shows the large hip bone, right? But also sometimes has a little bit of a butt to it, a booty. So think about how you want to position this. It doesn't have to be like a giant thing, but it should be typically a little flat, like the bone that's actually in your body. So what I'll do is wrap it around my two legs and then start taping. Now, no, this does not come up and meet the bottom of the rib cage. There's a section of spine here that doesn't touch. This is the area under your ribs that is just like where your stomach is. So this is just spine back here. If you're doing a skeleton, it is not the hips and it's not the ribs. Okay? So your hips should kind of look like so. They don't want to go too far down this leg because remember, this is where they're kind of coming right to that bend that you have them. That's where this hip bone should be, right at the bends you originally had on your piece, because that's how we measured our length. So you should be, at this point, your figure, you should have a head, you should have a clear separation where the neck goes down to the shoulders, a rib cage that starts where you're a little bit below your shoulders and goes down a little more than halfway down the spine. You should have a gap here between the rib cage and the hips should be a flat section at the very top of the area where you made your original bends on the wire. Okay? So your piece should sit and it's complete now at this point. So you can set it up to balance, you can set it up to do however you want your body language to work. But at this point you are, hold it someplace you can see it, you are done with your sort of the building requirements. Okay? Remember, try and look at this thing from all sides. Where does the spine actually bend? How does the head actually work? This arm, know that the arm shoulder socket here and the shoulder socket and where the thigh meets the hip, those are joints that move all different directions. The knees and the elbows move only one direction. So knees and elbows only move this way. Right? But If I'm turning my hand out, it comes out because I'm turning it at my shoulder. The shoulder is a ball joint that moves in all different directions. Ankles, hips, shoulders, all ball joints. So they move in any direction that you want, right? Back, forth. But the elbows and knees only move in one direction, up, down. Okay, so understand that. Think about how you're going to be working with your figure to convey body language and meaning.